Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're diving into a heartfelt and intense story about Huyen, a woman rebuilding her life in a quiet village with the help of Diep and raising her daughter Maya in peace. Until one unexpected evening, her past walks through the gate. An ex-husband she thought was gone forever returns, determined to reclaim what he believes is still his. As tension rises between the two men, Huyen must face a choice that will shape her future and her family's safety. If you enjoy this kind of storytelling, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss our next videos. The sharp, rhythmic thud of hammering echoed through the quiet red dirt yard, each strike carrying a steady beat that seemed to set the pace for the whole afternoon. The golden light of the setting sun draped everything in a soft, warm glow. Dee bent slightly, lifting a long bamboo pole from the pile beside him, his strong hands gripping it with ease before passing it over to Huyen. She caught it in one swift, practiced motion, her movements efficient, fluid. Without pause, she turned and handed it to the next pair of waiting hands. Around them, others were working in harmony, voices rising now and then in casual conversation before fading back into the steady music of construction. Despite the heat and the hours of labor, no one looked weary. Sweat streaked across foreheads, glistened on skin, but the smile stayed. There was a kind of energy in the air that made the work feel light. The energy of building something together, of seeing progress take shape before your eyes. In the middle of it all, Maya darted in and out of the adults' paths, her small, bare feet coated in a fine layer of red dust. She clutched a short piece of bamboo, like it was her own precious tool, tapping it against the ground, swinging it through the air, as if she were helping to build the house. Her laughter bubbled up in bursts, light and unrestrained, and somehow it made the entire yard feel warmer, more alive. From time to time, Dee's eyes found their way to Huyen. His glances were never long, just enough to notice her concentration, the way her brow furrowed slightly when she focused, or the faint upward curve of her lips when she caught Maya in a fit of giggles. There was a quiet pride in his expression, a kind of warmth that didn't need to be spoken aloud. And when Huyen happened to meet his gaze, she would allow herself a faint smile before lowering her eyes again, tucking the moment into her heart where no one else could see. Beyond the yard, the tall bamboo grove swayed in the gentle wind, their leaves whispering against one another like a background melody written just for this scene. The sound was soft, soothing, the kind of rhythm that made you believe this peace could last forever. But none of them knew that in only a few hours, the calm would break, and the yard would become the stage for something far more difficult than building a house. The sun had dipped lower, now hiding behind the green wall of bamboo, painting the dirt path in the last golden light of dusk. Huyen was stacking the leftover bamboo poles neatly at the edge of the yard when she noticed Maya had gone still. The little girl's game had stopped mid-motion. She stood rooted in place, her wide eyes fixed on the open gate. Following her gaze, Huyen saw a tall, lean figure approaching. The man's back was slightly hunched beneath the weight of a worn backpack slung over one shoulder. His clothes carried the look of long travel. Dust clung to the fabric, and his shoes were scuffed from countless steps. His pace was unhurried, but each stride seemed deliberate, as though every step carried a purpose. When the man stepped into the soft glow of the porch lamp, Huyen's breath caught in her throat. She froze, her hands still clutching the bamboo pole she had been about to set down. The face in front of her was one she had once known better than her own reflection. Her ex-husband, the man she had believed was gone from her life for good. Dee, standing just a few steps away with the hammer still in his grip, paused mid-swing. His eyes flicked from Huyen to the stranger, and in that brief glance, something in the air shifted. The easy warmth of the evening vanished, replaced by a tension so sharp it felt almost visible. Even the chirp of crickets in the grass seemed to grow louder, their steady rhythm cutting into the silence like tiny needles. Maya, blissfully unaware of the storm forming in the grown-ups' world, took a few curious steps toward the gate, her eyes bright with interest. The man stopped just short of the yard, his breathing uneven from the walk. His gaze moved slowly over the scene. The woman he once called his wife, the unfamiliar man beside her, the half-built bamboo house, the child standing in the dirt between them. His lips stayed closed, but his eyes were heavy with unspoken questions. The small yard felt like a bowstring drawn too tight, one pull away from snapping. In that moment, a flood of memories crashed into her. The warmth of better days, the sting of arguments, the cold ache of abandonment. Before she could find words, Dee took a step forward, moving just enough to place himself between her and the newcomer. His posture was calm, but there was a quiet tension in the way he squared his shoulders. "Who are you?" Dee's voice was low, even, but it carried the weight of someone who already suspected the answer. The man's mouth curved into a faint smile, though it held no joy. He didn't speak right away. His eyes stayed locked on Huyen, as if trying to read everything the years had done to her. Finally, Huyen's voice came, quiet but steady. "This is my ex-husband." The words seemed to thicken the air around them. Maya, sensing the unease, though she didn't understand it, reached for her mother's hand. The man gave a slight nod, but then his eyes shifted back to Dee, his gaze sharpening. When he spoke again, his voice was deliberate, each word landing like a heavy stone. "I came back to take my wife and child." The sentence hung there, slicing through the soft sounds of dusk. It was more than just a statement. It was a claim, one that threatened to pull apart everything Huyen had built in the time since he'd left. A sudden gust of wind stirred the dust, swirling it around their feet, as if the earth itself could feel the storm brewing. Dee's voice, when it came, was slow, but edged like a blade. "Huyen has her own life now. You don't get to walk in here and decide for her." The man's lips curled into something between a smirk and a sneer. "Decide? She's still my wife, legally. And Maya is my daughter." Huyen's fingers tightened protectively around Maya's. She wanted to speak, to push back, but her voice caught in her throat. Old fears crept in, the arguments that left her shaking, the slammed doors, the night she walked away with tears blurring her vision. Dee stepped forward again, closing the gap until the two men stood only a breath apart. Neither moved back. The air felt heavy, oppressive. "You can go back to wherever you came from," Day said, his voice steady but cold. "Or stay, knowing you're not welcome here. For a moment, Only the wind filled the silence, rushing through the thatched roof and rattling the bamboo walls. The man's smirk deepened, his voice dropping to a slow, deliberate challenge. Then we'll see who she chooses. Night fell fast, swallowing the yard in shadows. Just hours earlier, the place had been filled with the sound of hammer blows and laughter. Now, the only light came from the dim oil lamp inside the bamboo house, casting a soft, uneven glow that danced on the walls. Huyen sat at the edge of the bed, her hands resting on her lap, her eyes fixed on the dark doorway. The same doorway her ex-husband had stepped through when he left earlier that evening. Her thoughts felt like tangled threads she couldn't pull apart. Maya lay curled against her, small arms wrapped around her mother's waist. She didn't know the full story, but she could feel it. The way the air seemed heavier, the way her mother's voice was quieter than usual. "Mama," Maya whispered, looking up with wide, searching eyes. "Is Uncle Da mad at you?" The question startled Huyen, pulling her out of her thoughts. She forced a small smile, smoothing Maya's hair. "No, sweetheart. It's just, sometimes adults have things they can't easily talk about." Her voice was gentle, but the truth was, even she didn't have the words for what she was feeling. In a small red dirt village, Huyen works alongside Day to build a new home and a new life for her daughter, Maya. Their peaceful rhythm is suddenly shattered when Huyen's ex-husband appears at the gate after years of absence, claiming he has come to take his wife and child back. Tension quickly escalates between him and Dee, each standing their ground. That night, the man returns, confronting Huyen directly. Faced with the painful memories of abandonment and the reality of the man who stayed to protect her, Huyen makes a firm choice. She will not return to the past. Her ex-husband leaves without a word, swallowed by the night. In the quiet that follows, Huyen, Day, and Maya remain together, holding on to the fragile peace they've fought to create, knowing the road ahead will not be easy.